The amount of games released through early access is endless. I should write a book filled with terrible jokes, but in the meantime, we'll take the initiative to see how new games will do in the video game market. Endless Legend is a 4X game by Amplitude Studios. This was originally on Steam's early access, now it's fully released. You might have heard of their other 4X game called Endless Space. They're both tied into the same universe, along with Dungeon of the Endless, which we looked at almost a year ago, and that's still in early access, so we already have one red flag. I like where this is going, so let's continue on. The whole setting of the game is on the planet of Auriga, and it does appear in Endless Space, but the planet is dying and it's apparent in the game with its winter cycles and it becoming longer and harsher as time goes on. So there is this built-in mechanic to prevent you from having stalemates and playing these obscenely long games. To complement this, you have multiple victory conditions: diplomacy, economy, science, supremacy, or elimination. As with all of the Endless games, your resources are based on food, industry, dust, and science, but this time they added an additional resource called influence. This is used for paying for diplomatic and empire-wide policies, so you can't simply declare war on someone, you have to use your influence to pay for it. You populate regions and take resources somewhat similar to the Civilization games. The whole UI and setup of the game is similar to Endless Space, and for me personally, it was really easy to learn how to play. The tech tree is a bit different though. Instead of one massive branching tech tree with requirements, you have research areas that unlock after researching a set number of technologies. So you don't need to unlock a specific tech you don't want just to reach something you do want. Every faction has a main quest that awards you with extra resources or tech every time you complete their objectives. These are things like building specific structures or performing certain actions. You can get additional side quests with the parlay action on hostile villages, or by searching ruins. These can give you extra resources as well, and completing a quest from a village will pacify them and give you the option to assimilate them into your empire. For every faction you pacify and assimilate, you get another unit you can customize for your army. Think of them as ships for your fleet, except you can't strap on 12 weapons to make them glass cannons. You have slots for a weapon, armor, and accessories. The combat feels very simplistic. Even though you have positioning, high ground advantages, and buffs and debuffs, they don't seem to be very significant in the outcome. The ranged units have a choice between a crossbow and a shield, or a two-handed bow. Infantry units have a choice between a sword and shield, or a spear. All of these items convey bonuses, and that's it. It's just army-on-army combat in almost the same way as ship-on-ship combat in Endless Space. There's no value in tactical maneuvers. Flanks or pincer attacks don't give you an advantage. Just get the best weapons and armor for your troops, focus on superior numbers, and bludgeon them to death so you can auto-resolve. If you choose to control the combat or spectate, you can go in and out of combat to manage other parts of your empire while everything is going on. But I just found myself auto-resolving everything. Pretty much everything is a mechanic from Endless Space. I'm sounding like a broken record, but this is the best way to describe it, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. All the management screens were easy to understand and fairly simple to use, and it's easy to transition between both games if you want. I personally liked Endless Space. It's not an amazing game, but it's not too bad either, and I feel the same way about Endless Legend. The game is just endless space with towns and armies instead of systems and fleets. Basically, they took its mechanics and threw in elements of Civilization to create Endless Legend, and maybe you can throw in a touch of Warlords for good measure. And with my own personal experience with the games by this developer, the analysis shouldn't be too hard. For the next few weeks, not a whole lot will be happening. Everyone will be getting their reviews out there, but I never saw much hype surrounding it or any reason to pay attention to it from an outside perspective. It's associated with Endless Space and Dungeon of the Endless. This means nothing to the average gamer. You will see some Let's Plays, but it's highly unlikely any big-name YouTubers will do it, so its exposure will be very limited. After a few months, The game will be in a similar state as Endless Space, but this time around, they have a much bigger fan base. I rarely saw many multiplayer games being played in Endless Space when that came out, and it effectively devolved back into a single-player only game after a few months. I had trouble finding anyone to play with, even if you ask around on forums. Endless Legend will still have a similar outcome, but the community this time around seems big enough to be considered a niche community. I think they will have an expansion for the game, at least announced by this time, the main focus of which is to improve the lore of the Endless universe. And that's one thing I've been noticing. It seems they're trying to tie all three of their games together, that is, Endless Space, Dungeon of the Endless, and Endless Legend. More specifically, the Vaulters faction is tied into all three games. So let's go back to Dungeon of the Endless. I think they'll finally finish that game by this time. When I played it last year, it was at version 0.1.1, and I criticized it for lacking the gameplay and content to do a proper alpha test, and as of this video, it's version 0.9.22. So all three games will be done, and the fans will be happy, but attracting new people seems to be the developer's biggest weakness, so the fan base will remain small. I think we're seeing their grand scheme unfold here. They're telling this story across multiple games, which I have to say is quite an accomplishment considering they're all highly replayable games based on procedurally generated content, not on linear story campaigns. It's too bad very few people will ever be exposed to the end result. As for the game itself, if you played Endless Space, then it should be easy to tell if you like this game or not. If you like the Civilization games, perhaps you'll like this as well. It's a much simpler game, not necessarily better or worse. Price is $35. Not sure if you want to take the plunge, but if you're interested in playing with other people, it's now or never. If not, wait for a sale and my follow-up to the game, and possibly another follow-up to Dungeon of the Endless tied in with it. Thanks for watching.